Hello and welcome. I am Fox Spears. I am the program manager of fellowships for First Peoples Fund. I'm also a member of the Karuk tribe. This video is meant to help you learn more about the 2027 Artist in Business Leadership Fellowships and the application process, so hopefully this will be helpful to you. Here's an overview of the topics. I'll talk about the fellowship a little bit, eligibility. There's some things I want to make sure I share there. I'll share about the timeline. I want to make sure if people have access to the selection process and understand what that is. And then we'll talk about the application itself. How do you apply? And just quickly go through the questions so you know what to expect there. About the fellowship itself. This is a year-long self-directed fellowship. It's meant to help independent Native artists leverage art making as a way to help build or grow their business or their creative practice to, help support themselves and their families financially. So that's kind of the intent behind this. Participants in the fellowship will receive $10,000 in grant funding. This can be used towards their proposed fellowship activities in 2027. Their activities do need to take place during the calendar year of 2027. As part of the application process, artists do need to submit a proposal of what they are seeking to accomplish during the fellowship year. And there should be two primary goals identified. There can be more than two, that's okay, but you need at least two that you could identify and talk about in your application. Also, I want to make sure I say that fellowships are awarded to individual participants. So you might be part of a business or, a practice of some sort that does include more than one person. That is okay. Just know that if you are applying as an individual. So if you are selected for the fellowship, it's not that your business is receiving the fellowship. It is that you, as the artist, are receiving the fellowship. So be aware of that. For requirements, eligibility. So this is really something I want to make sure I talk about. One, the full eligibility requirements are available on the website in the guidelines. So look for the full guidelines button. You can find them there. They're also in the application and submittable. Please read through those. But there are a few things I want to make sure I talk about for folks. First, who is eligible? Well, are you a Native artist? Do you either own or you're launching an active art-centered business, or are you seeking to grow and improve business aspects of your income-producing creative practice? So, do you have to have a formal business structure? No, it's okay if you don't. But are you an artist who is making and selling their work or services or sorry, I shouldn't say performances necessarily. That's a different fellowship. But are you earning money from what you do in some capacity? That's really the important thing there. Next, artists in all mediums other than live performing arts are eligible for this. I do want to talk about mediums a little bit. So, we're pretty open to a variety of mediums. However, we do also, often receive applications that are listing art mediums that are really outside the scope of what is normally considered art. And is likely going to be outside the scope of what we would accept as an art medium. Approved mediums are going to include visual art, so that can be painting, printmaking, sculpture, making jewelry, and more. There's a lot that you could do there, as well as more traditional Native arts, so basketry, regalia making, storytelling, beadwork. There's a wide variety of things. Please don't think that you're limited only to those ones I'm mentioning. For live performing arts, so if you work in live music, live dance, live theater, unfortunately, Artist in Business Leadership is not the fellowship for you. However, we do have the Native Performing Arts Fellowship, which has the exact same application timelines as this ABL fellowship. So please apply for the Native Performing Arts Fellowship if you are working with live performance. If you work in a medium that feels like performance, but it's recorded, so if you're working as a film actor, as a filmmaker, if you work primarily with recorded music versus live performances, that is eligible for this Artist in Business Leadership. So by all means, you could apply for this. I do want to say for folks working in mediums that are going back to my earlier point, that are more arts adjacent or a little questionable, like, is this individual an artist? Is this something we consider art for the purposes of our fellowship? I recommend you reach out and ask me if you aren't sure if your medium is eligible. This fellowship does have business in the title, but the focus is for arts businesses. So businesses that have a creative component are not going to automatically be eligible. If they have a strong native cultural component, that often can be something that helps and makes it eligible. So, for instance, hairstyling isn't really considered, the arts or art necessarily. If there's a strong native cultural component to the work that you're doing with hairstyling, that possibly could be eligible. Being a chef doesn't automatically mean you're eligible for applying for the ABL fellowship. But, for instance, Sean Sherman, also known as the sous chef, he's been a past Artists in Business Leadership Fellowship recipient because he focuses on traditional native foodways. So I will say it one more time. If you're not sure if your art medium is eligible, I would prefer, and I think you probably would too, that you ask me and confirm if this medium is going to be considered eligible. At least from how you tell it to me and I understand it, I can at least give you a better idea of if it's going to be eligible or not before you start putting a lot of time and effort into making and submitting an application. Last, proof of tribal affiliation. I just want to touch on this. This is a requirement. We do usually see like a tribal enrollment, or sorry, a tribal ID card or a CDIB or Certificate of Indian Blood. Those are probably the most common things that people submit as proof. It does not have to be that. There are other things that can be submitted. If you have a question about this or what is acceptable, again, please feel free to reach out and ask. If there is questionable proof submitted and that ends up affecting your eligibility, you would have spent a lot of time putting this application together and submitting it. So I think it's always worth asking if you've got a question about whether something is eligible. So that is eligibility. Talking about the dates. So for the 2027 fellowships, the application is opening on Wednesday, June 3rd at 8 a.m. Mountain Daylight Time. And then applications are due by Wednesday, July 17th at 5:59 p.m. Again, Mountain Daylight Time. I encourage folks to work on and submit their applications earlier. If you are submitting it, on the due date or right up to the window, if there is a problem or an issue and your application does not come in, it is unfortunate, but we do have this hard deadline. We can't really make exceptions for folks for one person here or there. It's just not fair to everyone else who has been working on things and putting things together ahead of time. So I very much encourage you to work on your application, try to get it submitted, ideally on Tuesday the 16th or by that day. So if there is a problem you run into, you've got a little bit of time and we could try to figure it out if needed. Applicants will be notified of their status by or on Wednesday, November 4th, and it should be 2026. I didn't see it says 2025. And then fellowship recipients will be publicly announced in early 2027. The award year is the calendar year of 2027. We also usually do a fellowship convening in person. Normally we do this in the spring. It's possible it might be in the fall next year. There are things being talked about, so I can't guarantee when or where the convening will take place, but all fellows are invited to attend. We can only cover costs for the fellow, so it's really just the fellow that's invited to attend. Be aware of that, and if you are selected, we hope you can make it. It is not an absolute requirement, but it is preferred if you're able to make it. Next, I want to make sure I share information about the selection process. So you have access to, what is the review panel doing? How are they scoring these applications? So, program staff is going to conduct a technical review ahead of time for eligibility and completeness of the application. And then we do have an independent review panel. They're going to be reading and scoring these applications. They'll meet to discuss and review their scoring, and ultimately they will land on their scoring and make their recommendations to us. And then we will go in and slot fellows based on the available funding we have. The scoring rubric that panelists use is shown below. So there's these 4 categories, and they will be scoring them 1 through 5. On these next 2 slides, we've got the review and scoring criteria. So like, what do these mean? So knowing, here's what they're looking at. This is the section in the question they would be looking at for their scores. So under knowing, there are 2 questions they'd be looking at. Under primary goals, there's, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4 questions, as well as the budget that you would be attaching. Next, growing, looks like there's 2 questions there. And then lived experience, this is where the reference letter, your artist resume or CV, and artwork samples would be what they're looking at to come up with that score. So definitely, I want you to have access to this. If you want a copy of this slide deck so you've got these slides to refer to, send me an email. I'm happy to email you a copy of this deck so you've got it for reference. Okay, the application itself. How do you apply? All applications do need to be made online. We do have a PDF of the application questions on the fellowships page. It's under, I believe, application overview. And it may not be under the drop-down section this year. I think they are moving it. Just know that that is for your reference. It is not an actual application form. So the application link is on our website. It's going to be a little button that says apply today. That will take you to the application. We use Submittable, which is an online platform for our applications. So you will need to either already have, or you'll need to create an account with Submittable in order to complete and submit your application. You will be you will be able to save a draft and go back to it before you actually do make your final submission. So you don't have to be ready to fill it all out in one go. You can start your application, save it, go back to it. That's okay. But I do want to make sure people understand, again, emailed or printed and mailed applications will not be accepted. Next, I just want to say a best practice for anyone, ideally, please read through the entire application before starting to fill it out. That way you understand what the questions are, you'll know what to do. Ideally, you'll be thinking a little bit or planning how you might fill things out. So sometimes, you know, there may be questions that seem similar or could receive similar answers. You know, the review panel is going to respond best if they feel like you have thought about what you're wanting to do, you have a plan in place, and you're able to talk about what you want to do and how you're going to do it, and they feel confident that you can do that. So make sure to read the questions, read the instructions. Again, if something feels unclear to you or you've got a question, you're welcome to send me an email and ask. I'm happy to do that. Sorry, there was one more thing. Also, we do have the format shown for naming files in the application. It's ideal if you're able to follow that. That does make things easier for our review panels. Okay, now the application itself. Section 1, there's information about the applicant. I'm not going to go into all of that here. There's a ton of it, but there's definitely going to be general and contact information about the applicant. Primary art medium, there's a long list you can pick from. Rather than choosing every single thing that you do, I would say please select up to 3 of your primary or your main mediums that you work with. You can work with more than those 3, that is fine, but I would just say make sure to select the 3 that you most commonly work with and the 3 that most are most related to what you're applying for in your proposal. That's also where we'll have proof of tribal affiliation. You'll need to upload that. There's a lot of other questions in there as well. I'm not going to go into them, but section 1 is all about applicant information. Section 2, this is a reference letter. So if there's a person who is able to affirm that you are a native artist or culture bearer, and by culture bearer, we at First Peoples Fund use that term very specifically, usually refers to an elder who is, passing on traditional ancestral information. So, just someone who's able to affirm that you're a native artist or culture bearer and that you have a demonstrated commitment to your creative practice. This could be from, an acquaintance, someone you know or have worked with professionally. It could be someone you know in your personal life. It could be someone who has taught you, who's a teacher, someone who has mentored you. It could be someone you have mentored. It could be from a community leader or a member. They do not have to be tribally affiliated. That's okay. But just, someone who can talk to, who can just, say, yes, this person does this, is an artist, and I definitely recommend them for this opportunity. Make sure that you do allow your reference time to write and provide you with the letter. You'll be asking for that, and then you'll be uploading the file into the application. I have, on a couple rare occasions, had people whose references weren't comfortable giving them the letter. If that happens, reach out to me, let me know. We can figure something out. But that's pretty rare. I think I've only had maybe one, maybe two times where that's happened. Next, section 3. This is about the artist. So this is where you're going to provide a brief biography about yourself and your work. You can refer to our online artist directory on our website for examples of what this can look like. If you are selected for a fellowship, this is what we will use for that in the artist directory. Second question is going to be describing the current products that you make and sell in relation to your arts business or your creative practice. So like, what is it that you make? What is it that you're selling? Tell us about it. Third question, tell us about a specific example when you successfully set, planned for, and achieved a goal related to what you do creatively and your art. So, it can be any example. We just want to understand, that you have the ability to think about and plan and achieve things. It can be something small. It doesn't have to be huge. But definitely, we do want a specific example there. The fourth question, share about a time that you encountered a challenge when creating a new piece of work or product and how you were able to find a successful solution. I think being an artist means you often are running into things. You're thinking about stuff. Maybe you're trying something new, something you haven't done before. Working with new people. There's all sorts of things that can happen that are challenging. Just think of a time that you ran into a challenge and tell us about it. How did it work out? And how were you able to navigate that and find something that did work for you? Then for section 4, this is going to be for the fellowship proposal itself. So first question, if you are selected, what do you hope to accomplish during your fellowship year? This is where, give a broad general summary of what you're really trying to do. These next two questions, 2 and 3, this is where you would take 2 primary goals related to your proposal and expand on those. So this is one where, depending on what your proposal is, maybe there is going to be some repetition. It's okay if there's a little bit, but if you're saying exactly the same thing in answer 2 as you've already said in question 1, just that's where I say it's good to think about your response before you just start writing it and submit it. Does this all make sense? Are you saying the same thing exactly as you said in another question? Well, that's information you've already given us, so we don't necessarily need to hear that repeated again. Like, this is an opportunity where you can either go into more detail or share something new. For primary goal 1 and 2, we really want to know about the description and activities of what you're going to do. So this is where, how are you going to use the funds? What activities might you be doing? Are you potentially going to be working with other people? Do you have plans in place in order to achieve these? How are you going to know you're successful in achieving these? Like, do you have a system of being able to track your progress? So those are the types of things we're looking at and looking for when you're talking about your goals more specifically. You don't need to get super detailed about how you would use the money here, because we do have the budget, which will be attached separately, where you can detail more explicitly what you are estimating as your expenses. The last question here, number 4, how do you anticipate your proposed fellowship goals and activities are going to strengthen your business and or further your economic self-sufficiency? So, what is this proposal going to do for you? How is it going to help you? Why is this going to be something meaningful for you to participate in? Is it, how is it going to help you financially beyond, well, you've got money for this, but is there a longer term thing to what you're trying to achieve here? Will it help you increase your income in the future in some manner? That's great information to share with us. So there is a lot of additional information you can refer to both in the application overview document and on the actual application itself. So I talked about these. These are really the big questions about your proposal, but there's definitely more information in there that you can look at too. Section 5, these are the supporting documents. So an artist's resume or a CV, which is short for curriculum vitae. This is not a standard resume, that you might use to apply for a job. We would want this to be more specific to what is your arts experience or, native cultural experience. Things that are relevant to your art practice would be what would be included on that. You can certainly search online for examples of artist resumes or artist CVs. There's a lot of stuff out there, a lot of thoughts. There's not necessarily a specific format it has to be. But it should be focused more on your art and or native cultural types of experiences. Number 2, a budget. In the application, we do have a file that you can use as a budget where you can list your expenses. If you have your own type of format for a budget you prefer to use, that's okay. You don't have to use ours. If maybe you're working with something where there's already a budget in relation to what you might be doing, maybe you have something you can already share, but you would still need to make sure you're highlighting on your budget if it's bigger than like if there are multiple income sources on a budget that you share with us, you should highlight, okay, well, these are the pieces where if I get this grant, this is what the grant funding would go towards. Number 3, artwork samples. So between 4 and 8 artwork samples are required. Those are files that are uploaded. There's an asterisk here. I just want to say that the artwork sample metadata does need to be entered for each uploaded file. There are categories there for title, medium, and year, and an optional category is a description. This is one that it does not let us automatically require be filled out. So please, I do ask that you fill out the artwork sample metadata. We're doing that instead of making you upload a separate list, and it makes it easier for our review panel. The information is already right there when they're looking at the files and reviewing them, and I think it's probably easier for you to just kind of fill things in as you go. If you need to, based on the type of work you're submitting, if you need to adjust it a little, you can, we have the optional category of description. So, you can explain a little bit if you need to about what this is so people understand. Last, number 4, the artist photo. So this is a photo of you. It could be a headshot. It could be a photo of you engaged in creating your artwork. We do want it to be pretty focused on you as the artist. So maybe there's another person in it or other people, but it shouldn't necessarily be a group photo. Ideally, we want this to be a photo of you, the artist. This would be something that, again, if you are selected as a fellow, we would be using in our marketing and promotional materials. This section also, there's a lot of additional information you can refer to in the application overview document and on the actual application. So please, again, refer to that. If you have questions, you can ask. So yes, if you have questions, how do you reach me? This is my contact info. You can email me if you'd like me to send you a PDF copy of these slides. I want to make sure you've got access to them. Email's probably going to be easiest. I can be a little harder to reach by phone, but you can use that number on the screen here. You can text me at that number if you need to. You can call if I'm not available. You can leave a voicemail and I'll make sure to follow up. So yeah, please feel free to reach out if you do have questions. I'm happy to talk about the fellowships a little if you need. I can't give super specific advice to you about your application unless it's something, if you have a question about is this medium eligible, that type of thing, happy to answer that. If you want to ask is this proposal, does this feel eligible, I can probably give a little bit of advice on if it's eligible, but I can't really advise people too much out of fairness. So anyhow, thank you so much for listening to all of this, and I wish everyone the best of luck in putting your applications together. Thank you so much.